There is a version of you that only appears after people have mistaken your kindness for weakness too many times. It does not arrive screaming. It does not arrive with revenge. It does not arrive trying to prove anything. It arrives like silence after a storm, like a door closing softly, like a light being pulled back from a room that never deserved it. And suddenly, the people who once knew exactly how to reach you cannot find the entrance anymore. They can still see you, they can still message you, they can still remember the old tenderness in your voice. But the part of you they used to trigger is no longer standing at the door. That is what terrifies them. Your darkest upgrade is not when your heart becomes empty. It is when your heart becomes protected. For a long time, you thought your gift was your ability to feel everything. You could walk into a room and know who was uncomfortable. You could read a smile and sense the sadness behind it. You could hear one small change in someone's voice and know something was wrong. You noticed when a message became colder. You noticed when affection started feeling calculated. You noticed when someone's apology had no warmth behind it, only strategy. And because you felt it, you thought you had to fix it. That was the old empath. The old empath would lie awake at 2:17 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, replaying one sentence someone said days ago. The old empath would hold the phone in their hand, type a long message, delete it, type it again, make it softer, add an apology, remove the anger, hide the hurt, and still wonder if they were being too much. The old empath would feel guilty for setting a boundary before the boundary even had a chance to breathe. The old empath could be bleeding emotionally and still worry about sounding rude to the person holding the knife. But then something changes, not all at once, not loudly, not in a dramatic moment that everyone can see. It begins in the body. The chest stops rushing forward. The hands stop reaching for the phone. The stomach still tightens, but the soul does not obey the panic anymore. The eyes read the message, but the spirit refuses to perform. For the first time, you feel the old wound being touched. And instead of opening the door, you stand still, not dead, not numb, still. And that stillness is the beginning of the upgrade. Cold does not mean cruel. Cold means you no longer set yourself on fire to keep emotionally careless people warm. There was a time when your warmth was available to everyone. You were the one who understood, the one who forgave first, the one who checked on people who never checked on you, the one who made excuses for someone's bad behavior because you could see their pain. You saw their childhood wound. You saw their fear. You saw the insecurity beneath their arrogance. You saw the sadness beneath their control. But here is the truth that changes everything. Understanding someone's wound does not make you responsible for becoming their bandage. That line can save years of your life. Because some people did not love your empathy, they used it. They noticed that you stayed longer than most people. They noticed that guilt worked on you. They noticed that silence made you anxious. They noticed that if they pulled away, you would lean in. They noticed that if they acted wounded, you would forget that they wounded you first. And the painful part is this: you may have called that love. You may have thought, I am loyal. I am patient. I am compassionate. I do not give up on people. But sometimes what you call patience is actually self abandonment wearing a beautiful name. Sometimes what you call loyalty is fear of letting go. Sometimes what you call compassion is your nervous system trying to earn safety from someone who keeps making you unsafe. That realization can break your heart, but it also gives your power back because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Once you feel the manipulation under the softness no longer hypnotizes you. Once you recognize the guilt inside the apology stops sounding sacred. Once you understand that access to you has been treated like a right instead of a privilege, something ancient inside you rises and says, enough. That is the moment the empath becomes cold, calm, and unreachable, not cold to love, cold to control, not calm because nothing hurts. Calm because the hurt no longer drives the car, not unreachable to connection, unreachable to manipulation. A toxic person does not always panic when you leave. Sometimes they panic when you stop reacting because as long as you react, they still feel connected to your emotional system. Your tears tell them they still matter. Your long paragraphs tell them they still have influence. Your anger tells them they still have access. Your confusion tells them they can still rearrange the room inside your mind. But when you become quiet in a different way, everything changes. Imagine this. They send the message they know will pull you back. Maybe it says, "So now you don't care?" Maybe it says, "You've changed." Maybe it says, "I guess you were never who I thought you were." The old, you would feel the panic rise immediately. You would want to explain. You would want to prove you are not cold. You would want to show them your heart. You would want to make them understand that you still care, that you are still good, that you are not abandoning them. But the upgraded you reads it once, then puts the phone down, not because you feel nothing, because you finally know the difference between being called and being baited. That is emotional maturity. That is nervous system power. That is the part of you they never expected to meet. Calm does not mean weak. Calm means your peace is no longer controlled by someone else's mood. There was a time when one cold reply could ruin your whole day. One delayed message could make you check your worth. One strange tone could make you replay every detail of what you said. One fake distance could make you chase closeness like your life depended on it. But now you notice the distance without running toward it. You notice the silence without crawling into it. You notice the change in energy without making it your assignment. You stop treating someone's inconsistency like a mystery you must solve to be lovable. That is when your energy becomes expensive, not arrogant, expensive. Access to you now costs honesty. It costs emotional maturity. It costs consistency. It costs respect. It costs accountability, not perfect behavior, not flawless words, not endless devotion, just the basic dignity of not turning your sensitivity into a place to dump confusion. And the people who depended on your lack of boundaries suddenly cannot afford your presence anymore. So they call you cold. Let them. They are not describing your heart. They are describing their loss of control. The old empath used to explain pain like a courtroom defense. You would gather evidence. You would arrange the facts. You would soften your tone. You would say, "I'm not trying to attack you. I just want you to understand." And while you were trying to make your pain acceptable, they were often preparing to dismiss it. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to explain basic respect to someone who benefits from not understanding? That exhaustion is not weakness. It is your soul refusing to keep negotiating with a pattern. There is a sacred moment when you stop giving emotional presentations to people who keep asking for proof of the damage they caused. You stop trying to make someone feel peaceful about the boundary they created. You stop trying to make your pain small enough for them to carry. You stop speaking to the version of them you imagined, and you start responding to the pattern they keep showing. That is not bitterness, that is clarity. And clarity can feel cold to people who loved your confusion. Uneachable does not mean broken. Uneachable means the old door no longer opens. They may still have your number. They may still know your favorite songs. They may still remember how you used to forgive. They may still know the exact words that once softened you. They may still bring nostalgia, guilt, charm, silence, and half apologies to your doorstep. But now the doorstep has a guardian. That guardian is your self respect. And self respect does not argue with emotional trespassers, it observes, it decides. It follows through. This is the part many empaths must learn slowly. A boundary is not a speech. A boundary is not a paragraph. A boundary is not a desperate attempt to make someone agree with your pain. A boundary is a line your behavior protects, even when your emotions are shaking. So here is the practical action step. When someone tries to pull you back into guilt, drama, or over explaining, say one calm sentence and stop performing emotionally. Say, "I understand how you feel, but I am no longer available for this pattern." Then stop. Do not write 7 more messages. Do not explain the history. Do not add, "I hope you understand." Do not apologize for being clear. Do not make your boundary sound like a question. Do not turn your piece into a debate. Say it once, then become the sentence. Because the power is not in the words. The power is in what you no longer do afterward. You no longer chase after saying it. You no longer check whether they liked it. You no longer panic because they are upset. You no longer return to soften the consequence. You no longer abandon the boundary just because they made you feel guilty for having one. This is where the real upgrade begins. because your body may still want the old habit, your fingers may still want to type, your chest may still ache, your mind may still whisper, what if they leave forever? What if they think I do not care? What if I am being too harsh? And this is where you speak to yourself with truth. If someone needs me to abandon myself to believe I care, they are not asking for love. They are asking for access. That sentence can pull you out of the old trance, because the old trance told you that love meant proving, explaining, rescuing, absorbing, forgiving without change, and staying available for people who only became gentle when they felt you slipping away. But love without self respect becomes a beautiful cage. And you were not born to decorate a cage. You were born to become free inside your own life. There is a scene every empath knows. You were sitting alone after a conversation that left you heavy. Nothing dramatic happened on the outside. No one else would understand why your chest feels tight. They were not yelling. They were not openly cruel. They said the right words. They even smiled. But something underneath felt wrong. Something felt sharp. Something felt hidden. And because you cannot prove energy to people who do not value it, you question yourself. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I am imagining it. But your body knows. Your body knew before your mind had evidence. And the upgraded empath stops betraying that knowing just because someone else can explain it away. You do not need a full confession to honor a repeated feeling. You do not need a dramatic betrayal to step back. You do not need other people to validate the pattern your nervous system has been surviving. You are allowed to trust the quiet alarm inside you. That does not mean you accuse everyone. It means you slow down, you observe, you stop handing out sacred access before consistency has been proven. You let time reveal what charm tries to hide, and time always reveals fake kindness begins to crack. Hidden resentment leaks through. Control starts wearing concern as a costume. Apologies become repeated scripts. Promises arrive without structure. Love begins to feel like a room where you are always trying not to upset the furniture. And one day you realize peace should not require this much self erasure. That day may not look dramatic. It may look like not replying. It may look like going for a walk instead of sending the paragraph. It may look like making tea while the phone sits untouched on the table. It may look like reading the words, I miss the old you, and finally understanding that the old you was not more loving. The old you was more accessible to harm. That is why they miss the old you. The old you could be interrupted. The old you could be guilted. The old you could be pulled back with one emotional hook. The old you could be made responsible for everyone's feelings. The old you would carry the pain, then apologize for being heavy. But this new you has learned something. You can be compassionate without being consumable. You can be forgiving without being foolish. You can be loving without being available. You can understand someone's pain without volunteering to live inside it. And that is what makes you unreachable in the healthiest way, not locked away from the world, lock it away from patterns that keep injuring your spirit. Some people will not know what to do with that. They may test your silence. They may accuse your growth. They may say you are acting superior. They may call your peace pride. They may call your boundary punishment. They may say, you never used to be like this. And maybe you can simply say inside yourself, exactly. I never used to protect myself like this. There is grief in that. Do not deny it. There is grief in outgrowing the version of you that only knew how to survive by pleasing. There is grief in realizing some people were more attached to your usefulness than your humanity. There is grief in understanding that the love you gave so freely was not always honored. There is grief in looking back and seeing how many times you abandoned your own body to keep a connection alive. But grief is not a sign that you made the wrong decision. Sometimes grief is the sound of your soul leaving an old prison. Let it move through you. Let it teach you. Let it soften what should remain soft and strengthen what should have been protected long ago. You do not need to become hateful to heal. You do not need to become cruel to be safe. You do not need to become numb to be powerful. Your power is in remaining human while refusing to be handled carelessly. That is rare. The world has many hard people. It has many wounded people pretending not to feel. It has many people who call avoidance peace and detachment wisdom. But the upgraded empath is different. They still feel deeply. They still love honestly. They still notice pain in others. They still care. But now their care has a gate, their love has standards, their compassion has a spine that is final form, soft heart, clear eyes lock a door, and the door only opens where respect lives. There is another truth here. Some of the people who hurt you are not monsters. They are wounded, immature, unconscious, afraid, defensive, and emotionally untrained. But their reasons do not erase the impact. Their childhood does not cancel your pain. Their trauma does not give them ownership of your nervous system. Their potential does not outrank their pattern. Remember that. Potential is not a relationship, a pattern is. And when the pattern keeps costing you your peace, your sleep, your confidence, your clarity, your sense of self, and your connection to your own body, the most loving thing you can do is step back before compassion becomes self destruction. This is where your life begins to change. You stop chasing people who only become interested when you become distant. You stop trusting apologies that are not followed by change behavior. You stop interpreting emotional intensity as depth. You stop calling anxiety love. You stop calling confusion chemistry. You stop calling trauma bonding destiny. You begin to crave peace more than drama, consistency more than charm, accountability more than words, safety more than intensity. And at first, peace may feel boring because your nervous system is used to earning love through uncertainty. It is used to scanning, waiting, checking, proving, adjusting, apologizing, rescuing, and preparing for emotional weather. So when peace arrives, the body may not recognize it immediately. It may say, where is the chaos? Where is the chase? Where is the high? Where is the wound I'm supposed to fix? Give yourself time. Peace is not empty. Peace is your body learning that love does not have to feel like survival. And when that lesson settles inside you, the people who once had power over your emotional state begin to feel smaller, not because you hate them, because you see them clearly. You see the pattern without worshiping the potential. You see the charm without forgetting the damage. You see the apology without ignoring the repetition. You see the loneliness without handing them the keys again. That is emotional sovereignty. And emotional sovereignty is quiet. It does not need applause. It does not need revenge. It does not need to post hidden messages. It does not need to make anyone jealous. It does not need to prove that you are happier. It simply returns your energy back to its rightful owner. Your mornings become lighter. Your sleep becomes deeper. Your face begins to soften in a new way. Not the old softness that begged to be chosen, but the new softness that comes from no longer fighting invisible wars inside relationships that should have been safe. You start hearing your own thoughts again. You start remembering what you like. You start noticing what your body wants. You start creating again, laughing again, moving slower, breathing deeper. You stop living like a detective in your own love life. You stop searching for hidden meanings in someone's inconsistency. You stop measuring your worth by someone's emotional availability. And one day, without even planning it, you become unreachable to the old life. That is when the mask starts trembling. Because the people who relied on your emotional reflexes do not know how to reach a person who now responds from self respect. They can try guilt. You recognize it. They can try charm. You observe it. They can try silence. You rest inside it. They can try nostalgia. You remember the whole story, not just the beautiful chapters. That is the difference. The old empath remembered the good and minimized the damage. The upgraded empath honors the good, but does not let it erase the truth. You can miss someone and still know they are not safe. You can love someone and still leave them alone. You can forgive someone and still change their access. You can understand someone and still refuse to be their emotional shelter while they keep setting fires inside you. This is maturity. This is healing. This is the dark upgrade that actually returns you to the light because the darkness was never your heart becoming evil. The darkness was the private place where you finally faced what you had been avoiding, the disappointment, the anger, the exhaustion, the truth that some people were not confused about your value. They were comfortable benefiting from your doubt. Once you admit that, the chain breaks. Guilt stops sounding like guidance. Anxiety stops pretending to be intuition. Longing stops becoming a command. And your heart, for the first time in a long time, is allowed to feel without being used. This is your reminder. You are not becoming darker. You are becoming harder to manipulate. You are not losing your empathy. You are learning where it belongs. You are not shutting down your heart. You are removing your heart from places where it had to keep shrinking to survive. Cold does not mean cruel. Calm does not mean weak. Uneachable does not mean broken. Cold means you have stopped warming people who keep leaving you in the dark. Calm means your nervous system has learned not every emotional invitation deserves an answer. Unreachable means the sacred parts of you are no longer available to people who treat access like entitlement. So when they say you changed, let that sentence become confirmation. Yes, you changed. You stopped explaining your pain to people committed to misunderstanding it. You stopped mistaking repeated hurt for complicated love. You stopped confusing someone's need for you with their respect for you. You stopped offering endless chances to patterns that never became safer. You stopped letting your softness be used as evidence that you would always stay. And now the old door does not open, not because you are heartless, because you are finally home inside yourself. And when the next chapter of your life begins, watch what happens when a toxic person realizes the empath can still love, still feel, still understand, but can no longer be reached through guilt, chaos, silence, charm, or control. That is when the mask starts trembling. Because empath's final form is not revenge. It is the moment your softness remains, but your access disappears.